Demeter, the goddess of agriculture. The story of Demeter begins in the days when the terrible war against the Titans had just come to an end. After the bitterest fighting the world had ever seen, Zeus, the god of Olympus, had toppled the fearsome Titans from their thrones and become the new lords of the earth. In the aftermath of such a war, the victors were beset with a host of serious problems. The most pressing of these was to save the human race from the hunger which was slowly wiping it out. Those 10 long years of fearful war had ravaged the whole earth. Not a blade of green was left, and those few men who had survived wandered in starving bands, begging the gods for help. Zeus was now the lord of earth and sky, and in his desire to help mankind, he made the goddess Demeter responsible for all the plains and the forests in the world. It will be her task to see that the earth bore fruit, so both men and animals should have enough to eat. The mighty Zeus had made a wise choice. No one loved the green meadows and the placid herds with the same passion of Demeter. And she threw herself into the difficult task with enthusiasm. The meadows were soon captured with green and fruit hung from the boughs, no longer faced with immediate starvation. Mankind slowly began to multiply. But this was not enough for the gentle goddess. In those distant times, man had not yet learned to farm the land. He lived in the forest like a wild creature, struggling against savage beasts and the wildness of nature. His home was a cave, or a makeshift shelter of branches, and his only food the fruit he picked out wild from the tree, or the occasional animal he managed to kill in the chase. And he and his kind were obliged to wander from place to place, for when there was no food left in one spot, they had to search elsewhere for more. Often, however, there was nothing to be found, and they were ravaged by hunger. At other times, when out collecting food or hunting, they would run into men of another tribe. Then there was no choice but to give battle. A savage bloodbath to decide who had the right to gather a few wild berries or go hunting in that particular part of the forest. It wounded the goddess to the heart to see men suffer this way. Something had to be done. She had to find some way of helping more effectively. The shady woods and the wild meadows were beautiful, but they could not always satisfy man's hunger. His way of life would have to be changed. Then, one day, quite suddenly, as Demeter was sitting on a rock and gazing thoughtfully out over the green plain, a thought flashed into her mind. It was the answer to the problem which had been troubling her for so long. "Yes, this is what shall I do," she cried. "I shall teach them to till the soil." She jumped and began to walk excitedly to and fro, springing into the air and clapping her hands with joy, like a little child bursting to tell the happiest news in the world. Her thoughts was took wing, and the further they flew, the greater their joy began. What wonderful changes this will bring to men's lives! Once they have learned to cultivate the land, they will have fields. Once they have fields, they will stop wandering from place to place. They will build houses and villages. They will have shelter, gardens, and animals of their own. In time, they will learn arts and letters. They will build splendid cities and, yes, they will no longer need to fight among themselves. For each one will have his own field and his own homeland. What a wonderful chain of events! How much can happen if men learn to till the soil? How happy I am! The kind goddess had no time to waste. She hastily disguised herself as an ordinary woman, came down to her earth and set to work. And a hard task it was. It was by no means easy to make people understand. Time and time again she planted, dug and watered single-handed, showing people her work and all the time explained patiently. But what difficulties she faced! There were many who mocked her, people who were really ignorant but thought they knew everything. She was mad, they say. This was how the gods had made the world. It wasn't likely to change. But the wiser ones watched her carefully. They sensed their lack of knowledge, realized they were learning new skills, and threw themselves wholeheartedly into the task. Their reward was not slow to come. How much more abundant was the harvest now that it came from seed they had sown themselves. How much more satisfaction they gained from a field watered with the sweat of their own brow. Ears of corn bending under their own weight. It was now quite clear which way was right, and little by little everybody began to cultivate the soil. They gave up wandering through the forest in search for roots and berries. People now started to build houses, gather in villages, and tend herds. They learned arts and letters, built cities, embellished them with temples and statues. So civilization came, and with it will also have come lasting peace. Had not Ares, the bloodthirsty god of war, not continually incited men to battle. Yet now he found his task more difficult, for the new way of life had made men hate war as the greatest curse ever visited upon the world. Helped by Eirene, the goddess of peace, Irene, Demeter stood constantly on the watch to frustrate Ares' attempts to spread war, and there were often times when long periods of peace reigned upon the earth. Civilization flourished, and Demeter was happy. Yet whenever Ares achieved his aims and war flared among mankind, she grieved to see the destruction of work that had taken tens or even hundreds of years to achieve.